Hi, everybody. My name is Dominic Violetta, and I'm a current MSW student who I'm going to be hosting this presentation. I'm just going to give it a little bit longer as people start trickling in, and then we can go from there if that works for everyone. Okay, I think we're going to probably start in about a minute, but thank you all for coming tonight. Okay, hey everybody. My name is Dominic Violetta, and I'm a current student, and I'm also a resident of Ann Arbor. So I'm going to talk to y'all tonight about finding housing and what housing sort of looks like in the region. I'm also going to touch on transportation, various things to do in the area, and I'm going to try to give a pretty comprehensive guide in about 20 minutes, and then we can have questions and answers. Um, this is guided by what y'all want, so please feel free to interrupt. Well, raise your hand, put it in the chat, stuff like that. But yeah, let me get started. Screen share, share. So can everybody see this?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about housing. So these are some of our, sorry, I'm not tech savvy. Okay, here we go. Here are some of our MSW student facilitators. Today you have me. My name is Dominic, like I said for the fourth time, and I do the welfare of children and families, and I'm on the 20-month track. And that also does affect housing, which I'm going to touch on in a second. So, boom, ask questions as they come up, but here's generally my agenda. Ann Arbor is consistently voted one of the best cities to live in North America. It has a really large community of students and professionals, and I want to touch on what it means to live on campus, renting, finding roommates, transportation, and all of that jazz, as well as just planning for what it's like to be in the program while trying to find housing, because that does add something to it. Now, on-campus housing. So Ann Arbor's different than a lot of college towns in that there's not really a line between where the university starts and the town starts. It's all kind of jumbled together. So when I say on-campus housing, I mean something owned by the university. If you're walking down Ann Arbor, what you'll see is you'll see the university's ombudsman's office next to like No Thai, which is a Thai restaurant, which is then next to like the law school, which is then next to like ice cream shop. It's all kind of flows together. So there's a graduate hall called Munger Hall, and this is for graduate students. It's a lotto system, but I believe most students are able to get a spot in here if they want. It's located within the central campus, I believe about 3/4 of a mile from the School of Social Work. And it's very nice. The amenities are great. I think it has a Target in the basement and a pool. A lot of students live there. It's very popular. So that's one option. And the thing to keep in mind with on-campus housing, as many of you may know, is your financial aid can be used for housing. Um, Unlike with off-campus housing where you'd have to use student loan money or potentially other sources of revenue. So that's one thing. We also have Northwood campus apartments. And these are sort of like apartments owned by the university. And I don't know exactly where they are, but there's something called North Campus, which is it's kind of like a little bit separate from the larger university, and Northwood is there. So that's an example of another place. And finally, we have graduate student cooperative housing. The University of Michigan has a really long history of cooperative housing with students, and the tradition is pretty like ingrained. So I believe the graduate student co-op housing has been open for several decades, and it's well within walking distance of the School of Social Work. And the thing about Ann Arbor in general is it's a very easy city to walk around in. You'll find it's built for pedestrians. And why I mentioned the on-campus versus off-campus distinction is, so my apartment's technically on campus, or technically off campus, but it's closer to the School of Social Work than Munger Hall is, even though it's not owned by the university. So that's just sort of a quirk of Ann Arbor. I do want to talk about Ann Arbor versus Ypsi too. Now, Ypsilanti, to those of you who don't know, called Ypsi by the locals, is about 10 to 15 minutes drive from Ann Arbor. It's a college town. Eastern Michigan University is based there. It has nice restaurants. There's a lot of stuff to do. It's often way cheaper in Ypsi than in Ann Arbor. It's a much more affordable renters market, and it's super common for students to live in Ypsi, well, in the program, and busing, which is free for students, connects Ypsi to Ann Arbor, which is nice. I included a map just so that people kind of have a general sense of what the region looks like. So you can see Ypsi in the area over here, connected by this bus route 94, which cuts across the city. Busing is great in the city. It's really well connected. You can get all the way out to Detroit on the bus starting in Ann Arbor. But this is sort of the area where a lot of stuff happens. The School of Social Work is on that 94 bus route, I believe. So Packard here, and the school is right around here. But broadly, that's the area. Now, off-campus housing is sort of hard to talk about because there's so much. Um, Ann Arbor is a really large city. It has about 100,000 people in it, and because of that, it has a huge variety of housing options. I want to be upfront about this. Ann Arbor is a pricey renters market. This is for a whole host of factors, both the university, Google has a campus here, and several other factors. Um, Moving outside of walking distance from the university can drastically increase affordability, however. Um, and when you're looking, especially in the downtown area of Ann Arbor, like the high rises and Central and North Campus within walking distance, it can fill up very quickly. So look around, but be decisive. And we have a huge variety of different options for what students want. So we have duplexes, houses, high rises, pretty much everything you'd imagine for renters. Um, if you want to find specifics, though, we have a housing service that's kind of like Zillow. And I'm going to send this PowerPoint out after this meeting with these slides attached and the link to these resources. But this should include information about reputable landlords, cost, and location of different properties that are available to rent. And this is through the University of Michigan that's vetting this information. So that's a really good resource for students who are trying to find off-campus housing. And again, definitely look at IPSI. And my big piece of advice on housing in Ann Arbor is that it moves quickly, so you should move quickly too. How to find a roommate. There's a lot of different ways. So Facebook is common. We have a roommate finder through the School of Social Work that students use relatively frequently. You have to be a student who has a U of M ID and an email set up and committed. But once you have that, you can find roommates through our school and you'll be matched. And I know several people who have done this and it's worked out relatively well. A lot of a lot of apartment complexes in the area have what I can only describe as like a speed dating app for finding roommates, where it's like set up where you have like preferences and you kind of like swipe right or swipe left. And it's a little bit odd, but it works really well from what I've heard. So those are some common ways to find roommates. But again, I recommend using the roommate finder, and I also recommend Facebook and other options for students. And finally, the graduate co-op again. Transportation. This is really important because as a student in the program, you will have to attend classes as well as field. And that's typically 2 to 3 days a week. And we have field sites all over the state. So just thinking about where you want to be placed or where you could be placed vis-a-vis where you end up living. So Ann Arbor is designed for to be walkable, made for pedestrians. However, that means parking and city driving are not great. This is one of the bigger complaints from students actually, is that parking is, you'll be able to find a spot. You can always find a spot, but it can be a little bit frustrating, is how I put it. There are many garages in the city, but yes, just be conscious and aware of this. So students can pay for a parking pass through the university or use one of the many structures in the city. Again, it's designed to be able to walk around and have a nice day, but driving in, it's not great. Students use busing a lot. So the entirety of the city is connected through busing lanes, as well as out to IPSI. And finally, we have a small regional airport. One of the things to think about though is what your field may look like and how you intend on getting there. So you might need a car. For me, my field placement is in Ypsilanti. I work at a school in Ypsilanti and it's about a 10-minute drive, which is really nice. Other students have a longer commute because they might be a Detroit-based scholar. And they have classes here, but they commute to Detroit. They might carpool with some people, but that's just something to be aware of too. So yes, and if you do not have a car, we do have transportation allowances, not allowances, but transportation understandings at the field office. So let's say you don't own a car, you put that on the field application and the field office will try to find a field site you don't have to drive to relative to where you live. So if you're in Ann Arbor, they'll find a field placement within busing range. A lot of students work at the School of Social Work actually. What to do in Michigan? So Michigan weather, be prepared for a large variance. It can be 20 degrees out, it can be 80 degrees out, it can be 50 degrees, and then 90 degrees in the same week. Ann Arbor is known for its food. Here are some of my favorite restaurants in the city. Madras Masala is the best Indian restaurant. Surfing Turtles for ramen. Side Biscuit is a wing restaurant. Miss Kim's a Korean place. And then there's Zingerman's, which is our classic deli. We also have a large number of parks. Um, Within the city, there's the Arboretum, which is a beautiful, beautiful park that students go to a lot. And finally, we have the Ann Arbor Art Fair, which I believe is the largest open air art fair in North America. So now we have time for questions. I wanted to get through that kind of quick so that we could have our kind of more open-ended Q&A session, if that works for everybody. Yeah, Benjamin?
Hey, just want to say thanks for putting this on tonight. I appreciate it. I was just wondering, since you briefly touched on it, I was fortunate enough to get a spot in Munger, and I guess I was just curious to see if I know you don't live there, but if you just had any other like just general information about it. You can't like go in and do a tour or anything like that in advance. So I've obviously seen quite a bit of information online,
Yeah.
etc. But I guess I was just curious if you heard of like any other students and what their perspective living there has been like.
So generally people like it quite a bit. However, I've been told that you're aware of how the windows work in Munger Hall, right? The absence of windows. So those of you who don't know, Munger Hall was it's a very large building that can fit a lot of students and it has very nice amenities, but part of how it's able to fit so many students is that not all of the rooms have windows. They have sunlights and other things to sort of replicate that. Um, but some students can report that being an unpleasant living experience because of that fact. And all of the shared and common spaces have windows though. So students are really encouraged to get out and sort of socialize with one another and just be in the shared space. And I'm told that you should definitely do that actually. So that's been the one thing I've heard about Marner Hall to keep in mind. Otherwise, it has it's a it's a really nice building to live in, and they do that on purpose to make up for the windows.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks.
Oh yeah. So I see our university parking pass is competitive. I don't know. So there is a way to get a university parking pass. I believe like a fixed amount up front, I think. I've never heard of it filling up. I'll put it like that. Good question though. So I live in a campus management apartment, relatively nearby campus, and I appreciate being able to be within walking distance of the city. That's a personal choice, but generally speaking, if you were to live in Ann Arbor, there's like a lot of apartments just outside of walking distance, especially in Arbor land, which are really useful for students, and I know a lot of people who live there as well. Are there any other questions for the group? Hmm. Oh, groceries. Good question. I do a lot of my shopping in Ypsilanti, actually. Um, so Ypsilanti has an Aldi's and a Meijer that are about 2, 3 miles from city center, and I go there a lot because it's much cheaper. Ann Arbor has a Target within walking distance of downtown. Um, yeah, so those are some places I'd recommend to go for groceries. There's also a food bank for students by the student union downtown. I have a question. Have you heard of places to avoid? I've been applying at places in Ipsy, but everything is so full, I'm getting discouraged. Places to avoid. I'm not as familiar with the Ipsy renting market as I am with the Ann Arbor renting market. So generally speaking, the closer to Depot Town, the higher the price. but Depot Town's the sort of area of the city where there are the most things to do, as I understand it. Um, and unfortunately, it is a very competitive renting market, even in Ipsy. So it is kind of a first come, first serve thing. I'm so like I wish I could be a little more specific on that. I'm sorry. Apartments.com is a good one. What I can do also for you is put that link in the chat for the U of M renting service. There's one, and also I would use the roommate finder. You might be able to find another apartment through that as people are starting to like find a third or fourth person to fill out their lease. So let me try to grab that too. Yeah, I think that those two might be pretty helpful for you just because they have like extra stuff that might not be on apartments.com. And if you use the roommate finder, you might be able to like find a place that has like an extra slot for a student. A few apartments. Oh, sweet. Ooh, the one thing I would really encourage students to keep in mind is so we have different program lengths. So there's the 12, 16, and 20 month apartments, or the 12, 16, and 20-month timelines for students. Leases are typically a year. So 16-month students should be aware that they might be in a situation where they need to find another place, or they might need to stay in a place for an extra year, or they might have to be a little creative with housing, just so that that's something to keep on the radar. I see a question. Yeah, there are many subleasing options on Facebook. Um, Someone asked how far I'm along in the program and if I went here as an undergrad. I'm about halfway through the program right now. I did not go here for undergrad. I went to Michigan State. But I like it a lot. It's been really valuable. I've learned a ton. The field is great. I think that's one of the best parts of the program from my experience. I've learned a ton, and that's been super valuable for me. These have been good questions, y'all. Oh my gosh, we like solved the housing situation in the chat. That's great. But if we don't have any other questions, I think we can kind of start wrapping stuff up. Nope, not yet, LOL. Any other questions? Have I stayed in the same apartment since I started the program? Yes. I'm staying in the same place because I'm a 20-month student and I have another year of the program. So I'm just staying in the same place for the duration of the program. I hate moving. It's the worst. So I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible. And my rent's relatively cheap for downtown. I don't have an air conditioner, and I don't have an unit washer and dryer, but it's very cheap. Thank you all for attending tonight, and I look forward to seeing you all next year. Yes, the cheap range for Ann Arbor. Um, Truly, it really depends on how far you are from walking distance of downtown. So if you are not in walking distance, I think it's super reasonable relative to like Midwest renting, which is between like 800 and 1200 roughly a person. If that's, but that's like within driving distance of the city. Um, if you're within walking distance of the downtown, it jumps up very quickly to between 1500 and about 3000. And I'm at the lower end of that range. They're building a lot more housing, so hopefully that starts to bring stuff down now. No, Ipsy is much cheaper. Ipsy is much cheaper. I would say Ipsy's within that like maybe low end 6 to 12 range generally. There's going to be obviously nicer luxury apartments in Ipsy, but generally I think it's that 6 to 12 range. Yeah, it's gone up. I've heard that. It's a tough area to rent in, I'd say. In large part because we did just get the Google campus that's set up here, which is great for like local jobs, but it did bring the rent up because there's still housing being built to meet the need. Happy I could be helpful. But yeah, that's about all I got. So thank y'all for coming tonight.